Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Philippines Uncut. I'm Buddy Cunanan. Now, on this show, we talk about everything under the sun. And for the last few weeks, we've been talking about heroes, specifically our athletes, the trials and tribulations they face, and the honors that they bring to our country. Now, tonight's show, we're going to talk about heroes again, but a different type of hero. Now, these champions provide financial security for their families. They create wealth for others. They spur innovation. They also provide our economy with a significant boost or shot in the arm. Now, we see them everywhere, their work everywhere, in many things that we do and the places we go to. These people are entrepreneurs. Now, when we talk about entrepreneurs, we usually think about the big guys like Bill Gates and Sir Richard Branson, and even perhaps the most successful and most famous Filipino entrepreneur, Henry C., who is the founder of the SM group of companies. But there's so many other entrepreneurs in our society, unsung ones. Like, for instance, a good friend of mine, Vanessa Vetrano, who recently opened, a few years at least, her Italian restaurant called Galileo Enoteca. Now, all these guys, all these men and women are linked by a common bond, a common thread, a common experience, and common values. And this is basically, they had a dream, and they had the courage to follow their dreams, and they once saw an opportunity and a situation, and they told themselves, hey, I can make this better. I can do this better. And so tonight, we are going to celebrate entrepreneurs, and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about how you and I can be entrepreneurs ourselves. And joining us now is a good friend of mine, co-host in GNN, and the author of Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs, Mr. Raju Mandhyan.
Good evening.
Hello, Raju, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show, finally.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about you, Raju, and your background. You are an Indian national, right?
Well, I was.
Okay.
And technically, I might be considered Indian, but spiritually and emotionally, I'm a Filipino now.
Marunong ka mag-Tagalog?
Oh, konti po.
Okay. Continue. And then, so how did you end up in the Philippines, and where are you from in India?
I was born in Bombay and raised in a small town called Pune.
Pune? Okay.
Yeah, I came to the Philippines in 1981, hoping to do my master's in business administration at the AIM back in '81. And I stayed on, and this is home for me now.
And what do you do professionally, aside from being a host in the coolest news channel on the air?
Coolest news channel? Okay. Well, I spent a few years in the corporate world. After I came here, I worked for commodities, I worked for an engineering company, and then I moved into sales and international trade.
Okay.
And for a good 15 or 17 years, from the mid to late 80s until the end of the last century, I was into international trade and manufacturing and export, and that's where I spent the major chunk of my life. And now for the last 12 years, I'm into training and development, so I help people become better.
Okay. What kind of training do you do?
Well, I do three areas. I do communication skills, that's, one-on-one skills or one-on-lot, and I do creative thinking, and I do leadership skills, so leadership and change. So these are the three areas I work in. Interesting,
especially the part about creative thinking.
Absolutely.
Yes, because, in our educational system here in the Philippines, sometimes there's too much emphasis on memorization maybe, and not too much emphasis on thinking outside the box.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And when we're talking about entrepreneurship,
yes,
it really is about thinking outside the box.
Yeah, that and so much more.
Yes.
That and so much more. Yeah.
Now, I want to highlight your book because it's such an interesting title, which I adopted. Adopted for the title of this show.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs.
Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, this is your first book, Raju.
No, this is my third book. I wrote a book on public speaking 6 years ago, and then I wrote a book on humor as a tool for leadership. When you laugh and people enjoy, so they open up. So I wrote a book on humor, and now this is my third book. And this actually came about as an accident. I didn't plan this in my life, but it's come about, and it's a beautiful little book.
It is. Now, tell us, okay, you say it came about as an accident. What kind of accident?
You want to know the genesis of this book?
Tell us.
2.5 years ago, I was invited to give a talk to a group of graduating students somewhere in downtown Manila, and there were 3 other speakers with me, 2 or 3 other speakers. One of them was a gentleman called Professor Arthur Ilano from UP. Then there was another gentleman who teaches entrepreneurship. That's his business. And his name is Boom San Agustin. I was the 3rd speaker. And I took the whole thing very lightly. There were about 200 or 300 students, and I took the whole thing lightly, thinking these are students, you know, I mean, what do they know about entrepreneurship? So I went and really laughed with them. I shared stories about people I knew, people who had succeeded, failed, and toiled into success eventually. And I used the analogy of pit bulls, because pit bulls are tenacious. They're very strong, persistent dogs. So one of the things that I put across is that as an entrepreneur, not only do you have to be creative, you also have to persist. You have to see the thing through. So I put that point across, and it took me about 30, 40 minutes, and they were laughing, and they were having fun, and they loved it. So after the interaction, after the presentation, I never thought about this, but Boomson Agustin, who's a trainer and a coach in entrepreneurship, he kept talking about it for years and years. That every time I met him online, in his programs, everywhere he was talking about Raju's pit bulls and entrepreneurs. So 2 years after that event, I went and looked at my notes, and I looked at my presentation, and I began to laugh and enjoy it. So I converted it into a book.
Now, tell us, what is unique about this book? Because if one goes to the bookstore,
yeah,
there are probably maybe 24 books about how to become a successful entrepreneur.
2,000. 2,000, buddy. 2,000
titles in your major bookstore about entrepreneurship.
2,000 in national bookstore.
Just in national bookstore.
You go globally, there may be about 20,000 books on how to succeed in business.
You just Google how to succeed in business or
Absolutely,
entrepreneurship. Maybe you get 10,000 different choices.
You know, people churn out 3,000 books a day.
Yeah.
Now, what makes this book different is, number one, it is fun. I mean, you will laugh. If you don't succeed as an entrepreneur, you're bound to at least laugh after reading this book. You enjoy yourself. So it's really entertaining. What I did was, people talk about structure, plan, cases, etc. What I did was I took real life stories of people from the street, people who had absolutely nothing. They had a dream, and they chased their dream. And I looked at the flip side of how they succeeded. So I cracked them up a bit, like if you talked about Henry C. So you probably talk about how he carried shoes on his back and how he ate fishbowl on the streets of Avenida back in the 60s. So I took the fun side of their character, and I put across the strength that existed inside those people. So I've got about 15 or 16 stories in that book, and each one of them is near to real life.
And this is like from Filipinos' experience?
Well, I grew up, I was born in India, but I have really grown into a man here in this country. So all my experiences, all my knowledge is really Filipino. So most of the stories are Filipino stories, but they are of expats in the Philippines. Some of them are expats because, you know, I was in the expat circle. So most of them are fun stories about Filipinos and Chinese people and also some expats. And after every story, there's a learning, there's a motto, there's something you take home and you can apply it.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you your book.
Thank you.
Tell us about the chapters. It's broken down into a series.
I don't need to look at them. It's here in my head. Well, it's broken down into 7 chapters, and the first one is just...
Maybe you open up?
So no, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's broken up into 7 chapters. They're very easy. The first chapter is just creating a preview of entrepreneurship, and of course about dogs, because dogs are really good animals, no? Then the second chapter helps you recognize your strengths, tells you where you are, who you are, how to identify your basic competencies. That's the first chapter. Because,
I mean, as an entrepreneur, it's really you against the environment. It really is, you have to know yourself and your
Absolutely.
strengths.
I mean, every starting point in life is about where you are or who you are. It has to start from there.
Yes.
Even Shakespeare said, know thyself and you know the world. So did Aristotle. So the first chapter, or the real chapter, is about knowing yourself, knowing your strengths. That's the first chapter. The second chapter is about understanding the world as is. It's intelligence. It's about seeing systems. It's about understanding what goes on in the real world outside. And so it's intelligence. It's about systems, structure, processes, and how to set up businesses so they become fail-proof.
Okay.
That's the second one. The third one is about creativity and about risk-taking, because every entrepreneur, besides being creative, he has to become a risk-taker.
Of course.
I mean, there are artists and painters and musicians who are creative, but they are not risk-takers in terms of business.
And it's a big, it really is a big risk when one ventures out on one's own and really puts your own, you put your own money into a venture that maybe perhaps few people believe will work, but you really believe in it, and you stick
Correct,
to it.
correct. So that's step one.
Yeah.
You know, that's taking the first step, putting the first block in. But entrepreneurs sometimes, when they grow to a certain level, give up. They kind of get scared. I mean, it's their money mentality. There are people out there I know who made like 2 million and they think that's enough. Some people who make 20 million and they think that's enough. But when you talk about imagination and creativity, you got to go the extra mile. You got to keep on going. Like, of course, Henry C is a great example, and so was Bill Gates, and so was Sam Walton of Walmart. So the third chapter is about creativity and risk-taking.
Okay.
You want me to go on, or
Yes.
you want to ask me a question?
No, please, please.
Okay. Post that, the fourth or the fifth chapter is about integrity. And when I talk about integrity, it's not about, it's about ethics, it's about social grace, it's about compliance, it's about law. But when I talk about integrity in the book, I'm talking about something that is within you. Not just compliance and laws, but people know what is wrong and right. You know, in a very instinctive level, people know that this is good or not good. And so it's about that. It's about really being an honorable person. It's about palabra de honor.
And treating your employees well and make sure that it's a win-win
And it's about
situation.
people and planet, and it's about
Yes.
profits come last, of course.
Yes.
It's also about looking after people and planet. So that's the fifth chapter. And the last chapter is really the most amazing chapter. It's like a climax to a movie. It's about how to keep on stoking the fire in your belly. Yeah, how to keep on stoking your passion, because people give up, people get tired. I mean, we age, you know, all of us age. You probably don't age. I do. So, you know, we get tired and we say, okay, tama na, tapos na ako, or there's no more to do. So that give-upness, you will give up the give-upness once you read the last chapter, the second to the last chapter.
And you know, we see a lot of these examples in businesses nowadays. I mean, the current businesses we see around us. Like, some businesses had a great idea, and they were successful, but they failed to kind of take off, and they just stayed the way they were and remained static and failed to take it to the next level. It's just
I actually, I'm into my fifth venture in the last 30 years. I feel that my first one, because I did not employ intelligence, that means I just jumped into it without really understanding the panahon, as you might want to say, without really understanding what the business was, or what it was all about, and I failed. Then the second one, I trusted somebody else to take me through it, and that didn't work too. Finally, for the third time, I learned the ropes. You know, sometimes you come into that aha moment in life and say, now I know. But I took a good time figuring that out. I put in my blood, I put in my sweat, tears, and intelligence, and then I went into business. The third time, I was successful that time. I failed at my fourth venture, again, because that was probably some mistake and too much risk, maybe, you know. Now I'm in my fifth, which is part of my profession too. So I'm doing good, okay. I'm doing okay there. So you learn through failure, you learn through success both ways. So that's the truth behind.
What advice can you give aspiring entrepreneurs on how to be successful and how to avoid pitfalls? What are the, let's say if you can give them a few pointers. Coming from someone who's
give me an example, a 25-year-old coming out of school, coming out of college. Number one, I'd recommend to anyone that first go get hands-on experience in the field you want to put up the business in. Because you may have a dream, you may have an idea, you have no idea what the world is like outside.
So be an employee first and learn the ropes, learn the trade.
Maybe employee is the wrong term. I'm saying go out there. Yeah, get the feel of it. So you don't really have to get 15,000 pesos per month, but you can work around that system, that industry per se, or whatever you want to do, work around it, get the hang of it totally, get a big picture view of the business, and then go behind it. I mean, then pick up your idea and then chase the passion.
You know, there's a saying, learn the tricks of the trade, and I read somewhere that someone said, successful entrepreneur said, don't learn the tricks of the trade, learn the trade. And this is exactly what you're saying. Really get that experience, put yourself out there in the field or industry that you're interested in, and learn everything you can about it.
Oh, not the trade per se, but about the trade.
Yes.
Big picture, much more bigger. A broader view of the whole ball game. You know, it's like how you want to go play. You want to see the ball field first. You want to see the audience. You want to see the whole thing. Then you enter the field. So that's the kind of approach you need to take. I mean, getting into it is fine. I mean, you may learn too,
Yeah.
but it'll be a longer process.
Now, you talked about the example of, let's say, a 25-year-old or 23-year-old coming out of college.
Yeah.
What about people, let's say, approaching midlife, maybe 30s or
Well,
40s?
Those
50s.
are a sorry lot, actually. I've seen a lot of them. When I started off into business, I was 27 or 28, and I was into my own business for 15 years, since mid-80s until late 2000. And then I used to meet bank managers, directors of companies, and chairmen, and people who knew business in a very corporate kind of a way. They knew the big picture, but they only understood and managed departments.
Yeah.
They could never step out, and they could never jump off the ledge and say, akong bahala sa akin.
But see, as a young person, it's easy for a young person to take risks because
Yeah.
maybe you're not thinking about a family. You're not thinking about a mortgage.
Correct.
But let's say an older person, maybe 30s, 40s, and 50s,
Yeah.
then you've probably got several kids in school, you have to worry about bills and payments every month.
Oh.
So maybe the risk of leaving
There's a good
secure
reason
job.
behind their fear. There's
Yeah.
a good reason behind their fear, but you need to understand that fear does exist at all levels. Even if a successful businessman who has been successful for 30 years, and if he's gonna go on to the next level or change direction, there will be fear, but this guy has a certain amount of gumption built in already. So those 30 years or 40-year-old people who have responsibilities in life, they need to be a little more smarter than the first batch of people. So
what advice could you give people like that? Let's say, about 30s or 40s who who dream about starting their own business. But of course, a lot of them, I would dare to say, are being held back by leaving the secure job with a monthly paycheck.
Correct.
At least it's there. I may not become Bill Gates or something,
Yeah.
but at least there's food on the table, there's money to pay for tuition. What advice would you give them?
Actually, I'm glad you asked me that question, buddy, because the chapters in my book are, number one is identity, know who you are. The second one is intelligence. The third one is imagination, that's innovation. Fourth, integrity, and the fifth is passion. No, I kept the passion last. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have passion from the get-go level, but you need to get smart about your passion. So my recommendation to them is to first study the field. Yeah, understand the ropes, create a plan. This is for people who are in their mid-30s and 40s.
Yes.
That means decide where to go, what to do, put the numbers down, do the risk analysis 6 months, 1 year down the line, depending on the product and process you get into. So 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line, have a specific plan, have enough support systems, and then get into it. So that's why I put the passion last. But again, passion is the key. I was in two minds when I wrote the book. I said, should I put the passion first? And with my editors and people who helped me write the book, people I consulted, they said, Raju, come on, everybody talks about passion. True, but you can get crazy with passion. Yeah? You don't want to hit your head into a wall and come back and do it again.
Absolutely.
So it's not just trial and error, it's also being smart about trial and
It's
error.
really passion tempered with common sense, with good sense,
With
intelligence, and
wisdom, yeah.
planning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as I said, being an entrepreneur is like going to battle. Especially, you have to have a plan, especially,
Yeah,
for
you can
people
go crazy, you can go like a dog inside it, or you can go like a general, like a Sun Tzu warrior,
Yes.
yeah?
Yes. Now, talking about pit bulls, I think this is a trait that we find in all entrepreneurs,
Correct.
whether big or small. It's that aside from being passionate, it is really being like doggedly persistent. And
Dogged determination,
Right,
that's what is
dogged
needed, correct, yeah.
determination. Like just sticking to it and okay, I have a question. Since it's called pit bulls and entrepreneurs, when is a good time to give up? I mean, clearly sometimes
All right.
you get to a venture and it really is a no-go. It
Well,
is,
may I answer that question a bit
please.
late? Yeah. Number one, let me talk about pit bulls, because I love dogs. And pit bulls are a feared species amongst dogs.
Ferocious,
No?
yeah.
They're ferocious. But the truth is, a pit bull is ferocious and mean only if he's trained to be ferocious and mean. Otherwise, he's a loving, smart, intelligent, loyal, dependable dog. It's really a good dog because it's a blend of the bulldog and the terrier and the pointer. So it has three specific qualities in it. People who own pit bulls, good ones.
Yeah.
There are people, if you see a mean pit bull, you got to look at the master. He's probably meaner than the pit bull. I have friends, Tiny Defensor, I have Pat Pasqua out there, I have Sandy Sandoval, Pinky Sandoval. They all have pit bulls and they love their pit bull. Jigs Mara, she's a teacher at UP. She has a pit bull. They love their pit bulls.
So how are they entrepreneurs?
So coming back to that fact, entrepreneurs need to be like that. They need to be persistent. They need to be loyal. They need to be intelligent. They need to be creative. And they need to have this desire to play. Pit bulls love to play. They're big. They look scary. So that's the match. In fact, when I first went into business, and I remember I'd gone to Citibank in India one time, and I was talking to the guy behind the counter, and I was telling him, hey, you've done your MBA, you've done your entrepreneurship, your father was an entrepreneur, how come you're not into business? And he tells me, he says, Raju, as an entrepreneur, you have to compromise. I said, what do you mean? He said, you have to cheat. And I sat back and was thinking about it. I said, that's not necessarily true. So people have this perception about entrepreneurs.
Or business in general.
Correct. So
one needs to...
businessmen don't have to be cheats.
Yeah.
Yeah. People think that all entrepreneurs or all negotiantes are cheats.
Yeah.
That's not true. So that's the match.
And you can find out in this book that you can be successful, you can have a good life, you can pursue your dreams in business, and play fair in a win-win situation.
You can win the battles of life, the dreams you want in the right way. In a persistent and passionate way, you can.
And that's the good play. That's a long game right there.
That's the inside
short game, a long game, and that's a long game that you profess in your book, Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs.
And it's full of fun and laughter too.
And I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to have fun.
Yeah,
that's
everyone, not just
fun.
entrepreneurs, even you and I. Yeah.
I mean, even the marriage, right? Yeah, it has to be fun.
Correct.
So entrepreneurs have to have fun. All right, guys, don't go away, because in a few moments, Raj is still going to be here, but we're going to meet a very successful Filipino entrepreneur who's going to show us that anything is possible if you put your heart and mind to it. So, stay tuned. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Philippines Uncut. I'm Buddy Cunanan. Tonight's issue is Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs. And Raju Mandhyan is still here, the author of Pit Bulls and Entrepreneurs, the very successful book for Filipino entrepreneurs. And joining us is Mr. Boy San Pedro, who is the president of B. Merck Enterprises Incorporated. Yes. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the second segment of our show.
Yeah.
Now,
good evening.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you too for inviting me.
Now, Mr. San Pedro, tell us about your background. What company do you head?
Well, I started as a corporate guy, working on a packaging business for quite a long time. When I started running my company at 46 years old.
Wow.
And from there, in about 10 years, we grew the company from where it is now at 4,000 strong manpower force.
Yes.
And servicing a lot of the multinational companies and big local companies here in the Philippines.
What exactly does B. Merck do for these big multinational companies?
Yeah, we are an outsourcing company. In local term or in layman's term, it's a toll packing. It's more known in the Philippines as a toll packing business. But we are more of a contract manufacturing company.
Okay, let's bring this down to layman's terms.
Yeah.
When you say, what exactly does your company manufacture or produce for these multinational companies?
Okay, the company is a service company doing toll packing.
What is toll packing?
Toll packing is it does the products of our clients. We don't own any particular product, but we do the products for our clients.
What kind of clients does your company have?
The big multinational, Nestle, L'Oreal, Unilever, IDS, it's a warehouse logistics company.
Yep.
In the local big companies, it's San Miguel Corporation, Unilab, NutriAsia, the condiments company, Petron Corporation, Pascual Laboratories.
Yes. So you do the packaging for some of their products?
Yes.
You pack them. So the finished product we see in shelves, in supermarkets, a lot of these are probably the handiwork of your company, B. Merck Enterprises Incorporated.
You're right.
Okay, now interesting what you said. You are an entrepreneur, and you started your business at 46, at the grand old age of 46 years old. What are your comments about what Raju and I were talking earlier about taking risks and being creative and all that. What are your comments?
Let me just start with, while I started at 46 years old, at 9 years old, I already have this desire to go into business. In fact, due to lack of funds or financial capability, I nurtured this. Let me just say this, that I am basically an entrepreneur by heart and by desire and by determination. Why? Because at 9 years old, I already talked to my father that I'd like to be an employer. At the time, it's called employer and employee. Now it's entrepreneur. And I said at that time, Dad, I'd like to be an employer.
Yeah.
That's a key word at the time, employer.
You want to be a boss?
I want to. No, what I told him is that I wanted to help my townmates. I grew up in a rural town. I'd like to give jobs to my townmates at the time, and but because of lack of funds, it's in there. And I work as a corporate executive. I was a corporate executive of a multinational company. And by force of circumstance, when my wife passed away, I took leave of the company and ran the business at 46 years old.
Now, Raju,
Yes, sir.
you have met a lot of people in the course of your work and the course of writing your book.
Yeah.
Are these traits, is this trait that Mr. San Pedro is telling us now,
Well,
is this a common thing among entrepreneurs? Are they, like, at a young age, people are born entrepreneurs, or they somehow wake up and they one day say, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur?
Well, let's say that there is fire burning in all of us.
Yeah.
It's the quality of the fire. It's the blueness, the depth, the heat, and the ragingness of the fire that's important. So if he said that he discovered the fire in his belly when he was 9, and he did not employ the powers of the fire until he was 46, but he kept it burning, so he kept it stoked. So even though he was employed and working for corporates, all through he probably was saying that, I don't like this, I want to get out, I can do better, I can be the master of my own domain. You know, that goes on in your head. And so entrepreneurs, there is a certain amount of entrepreneur in all of us. Just like there is a certain amount of a leader in all of us, there's also a certain amount of entrepreneur in all of us. It's how we stoke the fire, it's how we nurture it, and how we let it go out eventually. That's important. So he managed to hold it. So did Colonel Kentucky. You know, he didn't strike gold until Colonel Sanders until he was 65. When I said people in their 30s and 40s, they're a sorry lot, it's because they gave up. I don't mean that all of them. I said a lot of them too. Yeah.
I've dreams. They failed to pursue their dreams. Now, Mrs. San Pedro, I have a question. Taking up on what Raju said, did you feel that way? I mean, being an employee until you're near midlife, did you feel that way, that somehow you would see things and say that, hey, I can do this better? I have a great idea, you know, there may be a certain frustration that you cannot put into action yet.
Yes.
What are your ideas?
You're right. I did feel that way. In fact, when I was working, I was a very successful corporate guy. I'm part of the executive committee.
Oh.
And I helped grow the big company that I work with. You can see the difference when I ran my company. I had 10 people under it. When I left the company where I am an executive head, it's in the top, from the top. 5 years after, my company grew. 5 years after, that company went down, closed the plant, closed the company.
You were really the driving force.
I don't want to say that,
well,
but
I'll say it. I mean, based on what what we see, that you really were a driving force at that company. Now, was it difficult for you? Were you scared at age 46? And I'm sure you probably had, as I said in the first segment, people at that age have responsibilities, have bills to pay, have different things they have to take care of. Was it difficult for you? Were you scared to leave the comfort of a secure job that pays a monthly salary to become an entrepreneur?
At the start, there was this worry that I might not be successful. But then I'm living my dream now. I am now running my company, small as it is when I started. But then there is this trait in me, what I call willpower. There's always this willpower, the will to survive, the will to succeed, and the will to carry on. And there are times that there are things that it won't go your way, and you thought you might fail, but I said, I will do it. I can still do it. That's the willpower that drives me. One of my key traits is the willpower, and I'm also a risk taker. Yeah. I heard in the interview that there are entrepreneurs that at 2 million they wanted to stop. Me, I don't stop.
It was enough for them already.
It's enough for them already.
So as Raju is saying, some people get lulled into complacency, and they're comfortable. They say, why will I gamble more? I already have this.
Yes. They have a finite target. See, when you see a finite target, you say, okay, 5 million, 10 million, 50, not the money in the bank. It's not the 250 million. It's also the challenge of doing something new. It's also the thrill of achieving something. And I think your bigger scorecard, he has 4,000 employees. You know, in today's world, when industries are dying, to have 4,000 people happily working for you, that's your scorecard. So when you talk to your people and when your people appreciate who you are and what you do, I think that's a bigger scorecard for him today, because, you know, you eat a meal, 200 pesos, that's all you do. But beyond that, the scorecard comes from what you're doing for society, the bigger picture.
And gentlemen, if you think about it, all these things we have around us, we're all going to leave this earth sometime.
That's true.
And we can't take it with us. So what is most important to us? It should be most important, what we leave behind.
What we leave behind, the legacy,
society, for your children, for society, and the good that you leave behind, and you know, your creation, basically.
On my case, at 9 years old, I said, I'd like to help my townmates. The townmates is now just a townmates. It's the industry, the Philippine industry itself. 4,000 by 4 in a family. That's a good number to help in this world. If you can grow more, the more that you can help, the more that you can be part of the society that's trying to revive the economy at this time.
Mr. San Pedro, for everyone watching the show this evening, what advice can you give them? I'm sure we've got people of different ages who are watching, and they're you know, we probably stoked their imagination and their interest in wanting to venture out and do something on their own and follow their dream. What practical advice can you give them?
Well, you have your own dream, okay? Dream that you can succeed in life. Dream that if you want to do something, you can do it. And in so doing, you have passion in it. I heard that the last part of his book is passion, but passion is very important. The passion to do what you want to do successfully. And then integrity. You know, in our case, we take care of millions of peso worth of stocks. Not our own, but the stocks of our clients. And those should be protected. That's the reason why we are being trusted, because the stocks that we handle for our clients, they are safe whenever they are with us. So integrity, passion, service. That's to me the most important.
It's amazing that you two gentlemen never met each other before, and yet everything that you wrote in your book, Mr. San Pedro validates with his own life experience.
Let me read something someone wrote in the year 1912. This is he's considered the father of entrepreneurship. His name is Joseph Alois Schumpeter, German probably. He says, 1912, the will to conquer, the dream and the will to found a private kingdom, and the joy of creating, of getting things done. Yeah? So you said leaving a legacy. I think it's, besides leaving a legacy, also what you're creating while you're alive, consciously building something now. And if it gets left behind, fine, you know, but do something now. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And this is true 100 years ago.
100 years ago,
it is true between us two, you know, even though he doesn't have gray hair.
Mr. San Pedro, would you like to say something to our viewers before we go?
Well, it's not much. You know what? I'm a businessman. I don't talk much. I strategize. I do business well. But my friend here is much good, what you call this, good, more eloquent. But my parting word is, if you have your dream, do it. Be successful. Don't fail. That's the more important part of this.
Let me repeat the same thing in a creative way, because that's my business, no? Let me say this. Do I say this?
Yes.
Just what he said. Let me say this. Towards your dreams, towards your dream, ignite yourself with such passion that people from far and wide will come watch you burn.
Very well said, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And I hope our viewers have learned a lot from this. And good luck in your endeavors. And good luck to you in your book.
Well, I'd like to give this to Mr.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Please enjoy.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. And yes, at this juncture, I'd like to also greet two very good friends, Jensen and Dee Abrigo, they're entrepreneurs, and they run the best car shop in Taguig, which is called Buting's First, and they're avid supporters of this program. Thank you guys for your support. Buting's First, and it's the best place in Taguig to have your car fixed.
Where in Taguig is that?
I'll give you a map later.
All right, good night. Thank you very much.
Because he lives in Taguig as well.
Oh, me
All
too,
right.
yeah.
So guys, I hope you learned a lot about entrepreneurship and got inspired by these two gentlemen here. Catch us again next week here in the show, where we talk about the issues that matter to you, because you matter the most. See you next week.